Faran, I'll spare the audience and your blushes by not repeating all the wonderful compliments I paid you in the
I'll have to go back and watch.
introduction to this interview. You can go back and hear them on YouTube. I was asking you, just survey the scene as 2023 opens in the United States. How does the political lie of the land look to you?
You know, George, and again, so sorry for the audio issues. It was on my end, actually. We're just learning. But so 2023, starting out with a bang, on Tuesday, you have the new Congress that's going to be swearing in, and they, on Tuesday, are also going to be voting on who the House Speaker will be. For those that don't know, across the pond here, the Republicans took back the House with a 222-seat majority. Kevin McCarthy, right now the House Minority Leader at the moment, you need about 218 votes to secure that House speakership position. There are 5 Republicans, namely from the Freedom Caucus, saying, nope, we're not voting for you. So he has literally less than 48 hours to try to sway those votes back to his favor, because if he doesn't get the majority, then it goes to the Democrats, and then essentially the Democrats could, bring in a new speaker and take the helm. So as far as the political landscape, pretty rocky ground, George. Starting 2023 off really well.
So tell me, explain to non-Americans, what is the Freedom Caucus? What's their problem with McCarthy? And who would they prefer in his place?
So, it's interesting. But members of the Freedom Caucus, big notable names you would know would be like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rep. Matt Gaetz down in Florida. You have Jim Jordan. Senator Lindsey Graham used to somewhat be a part of it when Trump was in town. He's not really anymore. He's actually back with the moderate Republicans that always side with the Democrats that do as well. The basically not a party, just the elite party again. So the swamp is back alive and well, obviously. But the Freedom Caucus, they are very much, came on the rise of Donald Trump. And we're very much about, getting things done, being very pro-conservative on a lot of different issues, balancing the budget, not a lot of spending. And as far as who they want, they have floated Jim Jordan, who is a Republican from Ohio. He's on the House Judiciary Committee. If you've ever had the time to watch a congressional House Judiciary hearing, Jim Jordan was the guy, especially during the Hunter Biden laptop stories and stuff, where he would be just drilling people that were testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. And another notable one was Trey Gowdy, who recently had left. But it was those two on those committees that would really hammer down those that were testifying. So they've floated Jim Jordan. They've also floated the House Minority Whip, Steve Scalise, which, if you don't know, there was the congressional baseball game a few years back, and he actually was one of the congressmen that was shot and survived. So they've talked about him. The problem with Kevin McCarthy that they have, George, is that they think that Kevin McCarthy, since it's the Freedom Caucus and they kind of were pro-Trump, they don't like the fact that it seemed like he sold out Trump or that he didn't defend him enough. And they also don't like the fact that they just don't think he's a strong enough candidate. They don't think that he's going to be able to tell the Democrats, no, there's a new sheriff in town, this is how it's going to be. Kevin McCarthy kind of taking that role of, well, we need to compromise in order to get things done. When I say far right, I don't mean like alt-right. I'm saying like the far fringes of the right, because the Democrats and Republicans right now, they're fractured. You have the far left Democrats, the far right Republicans. Those two outside groups do not like compromise anymore. Whereas the folks in the middle, or that elite ruling class, they're all about compromise and literally getting nothing done. So this Freedom Caucus wants stuff done immediately. They already have a number of investigations that they're pulling forward the day of on January 3rd. One of it being the Hunter Biden laptop investigation. Where did the COVID virus come from? Biden's dealings with Ukraine. They have about 6 different investigations that they're opening up day one, January 3rd. So this Freedom Caucus wants to get stuff done.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait for those investigations.
Yeah.
Presumably, a deal will be done. They'll be talking turkey and carving out pork out of the barrel and so on as we speak, because it's inconceivable that a pro-Trump rump is going to allow the Democrats to take back the speakership of the House. So either McCarthy has to step down or these 5 will be bought off, don't you think?
Well, and that's one of the things that Kevin McCarthy is actually offering is before, in order to have a Speaker of the House step down, it had to be a member of the leadership that would ultimately bring it to the floor for a vote. Kevin McCarthy, to get those 5 votes, has been saying, hey, I'll switch the rules, because that rule was put in place by Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat. Kevin McCarthy saying, hey, you know what? If you vote for me, I'll make it so that it doesn't have to be a leadership position. Anybody can bring it to a vote to have the speaker removed. So that's kind of one of the concessions that he's been trying to make. Whether those 5 Freedom Caucus members are going to bite, TBD. We'll find out Tuesday.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Trump. We're only viewing him from afar and only intermittently because he's actually been surprisingly low profile over here. So here's my guess. It's probably wildly wrong that Trump's light has dimmed a little. Is that yours?
You know, it's interesting. Like I was mentioning before, the Republican Party, as well as the Democratic Party, they've fractured to either pro-Biden or he's too old, get him out when it comes to the Democrats and bring in some fresh blood, which is why Nancy Pelosi stepped down as House Speaker. You also have on the Republican side, those that are still very much pro-Trump and call everything that's been going on with him, for example, the latest January 6th House committee hearings and their final report that was released last week, calling it just this, since he started, this witch hunt. And then you also have the Republicans that are saying, you know what, he's just too controversial. The country is starting to kind of find some level of normality. Let's bring in somebody new. A lot of people talking like a Ron DeSantis, talking about a Tim Scott of South Carolina, a number of different people, including one of them who ran for governor, Darren Bailey for Illinois. There's talks of him floating his name out there to see, what he could do now that he has moved since to Chicago to study Chicago corruption, my hometown. It's very corrupt, makes DC look like it's just child's play. But it's one of those things where you have a lot of other people that are talking about putting their hats in the ring, but I don't think we're going to start seeing a lot of people jumping in the race until this summer, and they're just going to be poll watching every single day until we hit, May or June.
Of course, there's always the possibility that Trump could run as a third-party candidate. I saw that referred to the other day, but he would only do that if he felt that it was going to be too much of a struggle to get the Republican nomination, wouldn't he? I suppose the Hunter Biden investigation is going to do for Joe Biden. I myself think it's inconceivable that Biden will run again in 2024. I just don't think his bowels will stand up for it.
No. No, and George, it's so funny. I've been covering extensively all of the different Twitter file drops that we've had from the amazing journalist Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss. And it's so interesting because, being here in Washington, D.C., I have the closet conservatives, as I call them here. You don't come out and say you're a Trump supporter or you're a conservative in this town. And then you have the Democrats, that are mainly throughout the city. And so many people saying this Twitter files is a nothing burger. It doesn't mean anything. And I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. This was a pretty big platform that silenced a lot of people. Yes, okay, it's a private company, but it's also a town hall of sorts. And the game has changed when it comes to social media. And you have the Hunter Biden laptop story. Democrats are like, that's nothing, it's nothing crazy big. That's not going to, sway my vote, or that's not going to sway voters. And it's like, you know what? We have the most amount of independent voters we've ever had in the United States. There's a reason. They're not telling you how they feel. And that's why, the polls are always wrong, because people don't really want to come out and talk to you and tell you how they really feel. But from what I'm seeing with many, many people, when I'm like, hey, it's safe to talk to me, how do you really feel? They're like, I'm sick of the corruption. I'm sick of it. So a lot of the powerful elite need to remove head from sphincter and realize the American people are getting real sick of it.
Now, tell me this. We're both active Twitter users. And full disclosure, I have a legal case against them, which in February will reach its next stage. Far from being a nothing burger, it seems to me that these Twitter files expose corruption on the grandest of scales. It turns out that Elon Musk bought the company from the FBI and the CIA. It was nothing more than an organ of the US security state.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things, it was a quote that I heard, because I can't even take credit for it. I can't remember who said it. It might have been Matt Taibbi, where he said, Elon Musk didn't purchase a social media company. He purchased a crime scene. And when you look at how the FBI, I mean, you were talking before with the guest about the 9/11 truthers and different conspiracies like JFK. And, we all know, like we saw with Gulf of Tonkin, a number of different conspiracies that have been proven that we're not all crazy. Here you see, everyone's been saying the FBI's in with social media. The FBI's in there. The FBI's in there. Mark Zuckerberg flippantly says on the Joe Rogan podcast, oh yeah, they came by and we suppressed the story. Like, it's just no big deal. And then with these Twitter drops too, you do see that these people did a revolving door. They went to the FBI, and then then they went to social media, and then went back to the FBI, and then went back to social media. It's almost eerily similar as the military industrial complex, where they go work for the private, defense contractors, then go back to the Pentagon, then go to the defense contractors. It's this gross revolving door that these folks do it. And here at the highest levels, where these folks are supposed to be about justice, about truth, we saw none of it. And it was completely politicized, which the conspiracy of the FBI is politicized. Ron Paul saying for decades now, abolish the FBI, and he was called crazy. I think he deserves an apology at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they called it a public square, but it was actually a prison exercise yard. It was watched over by the watchtowers and the men with guns up on those towers. And if you were dangerously close to breaking out of the prevailing orthodoxy, you would be metaphorically shot down. And the numbers of ex-spooks of various kinds that were literally employed by these companies, we only know, thanks to Musk and Taibbi and Vice, we only know what we know about Twitter. We know next to nothing about Facebook and YouTube and all the other social media platforms. But it turns out it is the biggest job creation agency in history for former CIA, FBI, security officials of various kinds. They go through that revolving door and sit in an office policing what the rest of us can say or read other people saying.
And you know what the scariest part of it all, George, to me was, in talking about these Twitter files, was that you only had like maybe 2 or 3 people in these email exchanges that Matt Taibbi lays out, or like Michael Spellberger too is another reporter on it as well. 1 or 2 people being like, do you think we're overstepping our bounds? Like, do you think this is not okay? You even had progressive leader Ro Khanna emailing Vijaya Gotti, who was the head of legal, being like, You suppress the Hunter Biden story, which he would be the one that would want it to be suppressed on party lines. But he's like, you are taking this way too far and you're suppressing the oldest news organization here in the United States, one of the oldest, founded by Alexander Hamilton, a founding father. And you're suppressing this story. And it's just, no, I'm sorry. We don't see the First Amendment the same way. And here it's like these people just blindly followed what the FBI wanted, what the CIA wanted. And rarely did you see any little pushback. And you see, like, how was it that a company like this not only gets this big, but also gets this brainwashed on the inside just by these, 80 FBI employees that were working there? It's just, it makes you think, like, are we doomed with humanity that there was only a few, like, people saying, or is this not okay? And that to me was the scariest part of it all. And props to those who have come forward. And, one of them even saying, I was the one that pushed back. I was the one that questioned, because it's probably not a safe position to be in right now. I mean, we heard what happened with JFK. Very scary position to be any kind of whistleblower.
Exactly. Your car might just suddenly start accelerating and the brakes don't work. Faran, Fronczak, as always, thanks very much for joining us. Glad you've got your voice back, and we'll see you
Thanks,
again
George.
soon. Thanks.